Most people think poverty is a money problem. It isn't. It's a thinking problem. And the dangerous part, the people trapped inside it rarely know it's happening because the mind doesn't announce when it's working against you. Today we're going to look at 10 psychological patterns that keep people financially stuck. Not because they're lazy, not because they're stupid, but because of how they were conditioned to think about money, risk, and time. If even 2 of these feel familiar, pay attention. That recognition alone is worth more than most financial advice you'll ever receive. Number 1. Preferring escapism over reality. The average person spends over 4 hours a day consuming entertainment. 4 hours, every single day. Now here's what nobody says out loud. That's not relaxation. That's avoidance. There's a difference. Relaxation recovers your energy and returns you to the problem. Avoidance just delays it. And the mind becomes extraordinarily good at disguising one as the other. Wealthy people aren't more disciplined because they're special. They're disciplined because they stop letting distraction feel like rest. 4 hours a day is 28 hours a week. That's a part-time job, spent watching other people live their lives. That is why Lamborghini ads are not shown in TV, because they know their target audience. Number 2. Misunderstanding communism and equality. There is a growing belief that financial inequality is primarily a product of bias, that companies pay people differently because of gender, because of background, because of who they are rather than what they produce. And this belief, however emotionally satisfying it might feel, is one of the most financially destructive mindsets a person can carry. Here is how compensation actually works. Companies are not charities. They are not social experiments. They are mechanisms designed to generate output and profit. They pay for value produced. That's a simple logic. So when someone says there is a pay gap, the real question isn't who is being discriminated against. The real question is, what skill I'm lacking at? Is there a negotiation gap? Because if every person of any gender, any background, any identity consistently produced the same measurable output and negotiated with the same confidence, the market would correct itself automatically. Not out of fairness, out of pure self-interest. If women consistently delivered equal output as men do with lower salary expectations, companies would hire only women. That's not ideology. That's math. That's business. The fact that hiring patterns don't reflect that tells you something worth thinking about honestly. If you feel underpaid, the question is not who is biased against you. The question is what specific skill can you build this month? What result can you produce that is impossible to ignore? How well can you articulate your value in a negotiation? Expecting equal pay without equal output is not a demand for justice. It is a demand for something for nothing. And the market does not negotiate with that expectation, ever. Number 3. Spending before earning. Credit was invented as a tool for expansion, for businesses to grow, for assets to be acquired. Somewhere along the way, it became a mechanism for buying things people can't afford, to impress people they don't like. The moment you begin spending against future income, you are mortgaging your own potential. Every loan taken for a depreciating purchase is a bet against yourself. The rule is simple. If what you're buying doesn't generate more value than it costs, you cannot afford it. Not yet. Earn it, then spend it. In that order. Always. Number 4. No financial buffer. Here's how financial shocks work for 2 different people. Person A has 3 months of savings set aside. A crisis hits, a medical bill, a job loss, an emergency. They absorb it. Life continues. Person B has nothing saved. The same crisis hits. Now they're borrowing. Now they're selling assets. Now they're paying interest on a problem that already passed. The gap between these 2 people isn't income, it's preparation. Savings don't just protect you from disaster. They protect your ability to think clearly when disaster arrives. And that clarity is worth more than the money itself. Number 5. Coping up by blaming. This one is subtle, because blame feels rational. The economy is unfair. The system is rigged. The circumstances were wrong. And sometimes, those things are true. But here's the question that matters. What happens after you assign blame? If the answer is nothing, then blame is not analysis. It's a coping mechanism, a way to close the door on a problem without solving it. The psychological shift that separates people who build wealth from those who don't is the shift from asking, "Whose fault is this?" to asking, "What do I do next?" One question keeps you stuck in the past. The other moves you forward. You only get to pick one. Number 6. Thinking on short term. The human brain is not naturally built for long-term planning. It was designed for immediate survival. Find food, avoid danger, rest. That served us well for thousands of years. In a modern financial context, it's a liability. Why does someone spend $100 on something that feels good today instead of investing it for 10 years? Because the brain experiences future rewards as abstract. The pleasure now feels real. The wealth later feels theoretical. This is why most people will never build anything significant. Not because the math is complicated. The math is simple, but because making yourself feel less today so you can feel more in a decade requires overriding one of your deepest instincts. That override is the entire game. Number 7, having paycheck social circle. This is one of the most uncomfortable truths in wealth psychology. The people around you set your baseline for what's normal, what's possible, what's acceptable. If everyone in your circle lives paycheck to paycheck, that becomes the standard. Not because anyone said so, but because humans are deeply wired to conform to the norms of their group. Think about it. When did you last have a real conversation about investing, about building something, about long-term financial strategy with someone close to you? If the answer is never, your environment may be quietly capping your ambition without you even realizing it. You don't have to abandon people you care about, but you do need to be honest about whether those relationships are expanding your thinking or limiting it. You need people who talk about Buffett, not Sydney Sweeney. Number 8, ideas without execution. This is a very common problem. Even I started this YouTube channel after a long time with so many doubts. Everyone has had a good idea. Most people will tell you about it years later, after someone else built it, and say they thought of it first, and they probably did. But an idea that stays in your head is worth exactly nothing. The gap between people who build wealth and people who don't is rarely the quality of the idea. It's the willingness to start imperfectly, to put something incomplete into the world and improve it through friction. Execution under uncertainty is a skill, and like every skill, it only develops through use. The businesses that failed because they never started is every business that never started. All of them. Number 9, unhealthy habits. This connection is almost never discussed in financial content, but the data is consistent. Physical health directly impacts cognitive function, decision quality, energy levels, and social presence. Poor decisions made in a state of fatigue, poor nutrition, or chronic stress cost money. They cost opportunities. They cost relationships that would have opened doors. Your body is your primary instrument. Every serious wealth builder in history, regardless of era, understood that protecting their physical capacity was not separate from their financial strategy. It was part of it. So reduce junk foods and avoid alcohol and smoking completely. Try taking protein foods with that money. Cigars are not flex, but lifting 200 kilograms is. Number 10, waiting for permission or rescue. Waiting for the right moment, waiting for someone to open the door, waiting for conditions to improve, waiting to be discovered, supported, validated. This is perhaps the most expensive habit on this list because it's invisible. It doesn't feel like a mistake. It feels like patience. It feels like being responsible, but it's neither. The harsh truth is, no one's gonna help you. No one owes you anything. At what point does waiting become a permanent strategy? The world does not distribute opportunity equally, but it also doesn't wait for you to feel ready. The people who move, even when unprepared, occupy the space that everyone else was waiting to enter. Nobody is coming. That's not cynicism. That's the most liberating thing you will ever accept. These 10 patterns aren't character flaws. They're defaults. Mental software installed by environment, upbringing, and experience. Software can be rewritten, but only if you first accept that it's running. Most people never get that far. They spend their entire lives executing code they didn't choose and calling it fate. You now know what to look for. What you do with that is entirely on you. Rich Arc.